Welcome, Cyborg Potato.
This is my attempt at sharing the process of me building something. As you know, we're all just cybernetically enhanced tubulars masquerading as humans. Hopefully it's not just me. Oh, oops, I forgot. Let me put on my human synthesizer.
How's this? Yes, much better. The wooden stampa, at least that's what I thought I was going to build, started out by framing. Using a utility knife, saws, etc. to cut and notch the pieces. It's always a good idea to check if they fit. I had to compare and do this multiple times, and even had to glue in some inserts so that it would fit properly. Hey, it's another picture of the thing I just showed you. I started to make the wheels out of different things, putting matchsticks all over them. And eventually I trimmed those matchsticks to then be able to create that cobbled multi-wood pieced wheel that you see on some older, or I should say, what you see on medieval siege engines, as I looked at a lot of those. But also while trying to keep this orky aesthetic where it's hammered together, it's definitely functional, but it's not optimized. So here, I'm starting to build the slots that the axle is going to fit in, that the wheels will then go over. I create a framework around things, and then I start to go from there, building even bigger wheels, adding onto those, adding matchsticks, adding bracing onto those, and continue the process of completing the detailing of the wheels, adding huge rivets, and further bracing and texturing to further that ramshackle look. The riveting was done by cutting rods of styrene. The wheels, I took some card and wrapped around them, all while I continued further framing this thing out using my available knives and things like that. As you see here, I'm still under the impression that I'm going to be building a quote-unquote wooden stampa. And so I found this box and the stick for a ramrod. Well, turns out that it didn't end up panning out eventually. I eventually changed course of what I was doing here as I started to add paneling and stuff to the walls, but it didn't feel right. Something wasn't clicking. So I eventually tore it off, essentially. And I started planking and just creating a base floor to work from. And here you see that I am using the shears, or they're not shears, they're something else, but I streamlined the process using wire, bits of screws. I eventually made a tool to help with this. You do what you can along with this. It's good to keep in mind that as I'm making this, I'm thinking of how I want the result to look. And so I'm very much going for a rough, weathered look, which means going over these boards multiple times, adding on different details, scratching in smaller textures and larger textures. Whether it's a large screw, a piece of wire, etc., or a drill bit in this case as well. But as here I use a used nail and realize that nail's not going to go through, so I use a different small nail, stick through this piece of wood that I then utilize to also try to help texture at this point, because I realized that my hand holding it was starting to hurt and it just really wasn't very effective. And so, It's good to keep in mind that you can make your own tools for the specific job that you're doing. Nobody's stopping you. We all have to try these different bits, or bits like there to create different holes. Texture. Here I was using the matchsticks as small little walls. I, at this point, started building the base for my ballista for this wagon. Other small pieces of the wagon, framing it up, trimming it, adding texture, getting that gnarled, weathered wood look. But, it makes a mess. Ballista, top view. But here, what you'll see is I actually decided that I didn't want the ballista where I wanted it here. Here I was taking snippers and things to try to get some leverage underneath it to pop it up and pull it off. You never know when you're going to have to reverse course and come back to it. Here you'll see that I began framing up top of the wagon to put a tower there to be able to have more platforms. The idea of, I didn't want just a flat wagon. I wanted the ballista to have more of a vantage point to see above the foes, per se. Here you see I'm using the saw and the utility knife to help notch out the wood to get the frame where I wanted it. And then sanding it down so it would fit more flat on the flooring that I just made earlier. Here you see me marking it using the comparing pieces to figure out the measurements. And what I am going to do next, using the saw and the other tools. There's a lot of repetitive type techniques here to utilize the desired result. I feel like there's this misconception sometimes that art is fully preconceived, executed flawlessly, and then we go home. In a sense, we've achieved it, we go buy a milkshake, but that's not how it works. It's an iterative process where we slowly over time we have to very slowly shave off here a little, there a little, slowly getting closer to where we want. Kind of like how a sculptor, in a sense, he adds and takes away clay. You can also do that with this assemblage type sculpture that I'm working on, the ORK Battle Wagon. In this case, I realized I hadn't textured it, so I break it apart again and go back through. That's weird. Random doorknob. Anyways, texture time. Continued to roughen it up using all those little bits and bobs, but one thing I hadn't mentioned before is I'm using that craft blade. Get rid of some of those sharp edges to break it up, make it uneven. Then I glue it back together. And I definitely don't tear it off again. You can trust me, right? Maybe? I mean, I'm on this video, so obviously I'm trustworthy. But as I'm starting to build this, let's just give you a little background lore on this. I imagine them as, they're like 40k orcs, but pre-space age orc. They're still on the savage side of orcs, but they're beginning to industrialize in the medieval sense. They're entering the more medieval era of technology. Hence why I made the wheels look more like siege engines. I feel like this is a hodgepodge of siege engine and early wagon that the orcs are then going to pull with squigs. I imagine that the 40k battle wagon that is you see in the kits is a descendant of this form of battle wagon, a literal wagon. And here we see it real time, frame by frame. Just kidding. In essence, I'm exploring the ideas of what the precursors to spacefaring orc technology would look like, specifically in the medieval version of orcs. You see the top view there, where I decided some of those boards there weren't quite textured enough, so I did a little more texturing. Here you'll see I'm starting to put up more of the sides, the jagged angles, all the pointy bits and such that every beloved orc warrior would do. It's just what they gotta do. Build some ladders with some wire, add some more stuff here. We're getting close to the end of the video. Here I'll start to, add more rivets, things, maybe some more filler words as I start to trip over my own words, because none of this is scripted. I'm just blabbering on. But I hope this was worth watching. Oh look, a weird screenshot of a Minecraft frog. Wonder if you will actually ever see it. Probably not.